This show's called Drewz Views. I'm doing Car Tuesday with Steven Universe, so check it out, okay? Now people love the verse, like, subscribe even. Now let's sit back and watch me watch it. Steven! Alright, Drewz Views here. I'm back for part 2 of the Change Your Mind, the Verse Season 5 finale reaction. Again, if you missed part 1 of this video, I've split up my reaction. I did the live reaction the other day, splitting that up into 3 parts. Yesterday, I put the link to part 1, and then I rewatched that part and gave my new thoughts and feelings on it after the fact, after having seen it a second time. Today I'm doing that for part 2, and tomorrow I'll do part 3. And then, so part 2 is the shortest part, I believe, only about 10 or 11 or 12 minutes maybe. It's mostly, if I recall, the action sequence in the middle, and then when they confront White Diamond. So I'm going to rewatch that now. The link to my live reaction to that part is below. I'll come back in a second and give my updated thoughts and feelings. Let's do it. Alright, so part 2 of the finale here ends, well, I'll get to where it ends in a few minutes. Begins with the shot on the pink boot or foot of the ship. It's a mech or transformer basically all together. Actually, I want to talk about that real quick first off the bat. So with the arms, head, legs, I was kind of thinking about like the symbolism, I guess, of this. Obviously, White is the main person or gem in charge, the diamond in charge, the HDIC, and she's like the brain essentially. And then blue and yellow are the arms on the ship. They're kind of like they're the ones doing the work for it, essentially, especially yellow, it seems like. So like your hands on your body, your arms do work for you. And then Steven part, the pink down part, is the legs and the lower body. So I was thinking that's kind of, the legs are what moves you forward generally as your body as you walk. And then pink/Steven is kind of maybe moving their society forward a little bit. So I'm wondering if that was intentional symbolism there. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but anyway, I was thinking about that just now watching this. So anyway, it starts with the pink, them being pressed down by the shoe, then Sunstone bursts up. She's very strong, but also probably a little overly confident. She also speaks directly to the camera at the kids at home, so that's kind of funny, because I already said she looks a little bit like a mascot or something for something that would get advertised on a kid's cartoon block, or something. And she has the quote I wrote down, "Will bust into her head and change her mind," which is kind of what they do. After that initial, burst of energy by Sunstone, they get hit aside with the hand, talk to the hand, White says, and then they're back as themselves, so they have to form obsidian. So I guess they must have done this with the rose in the past, because they obviously haven't all fused together with Steven before that we've seen. I'm sure we would have seen it if they had, so they must have known they could have done that with pink/rose. And I was saying it looks like the Indian god, or the Hindu god or something while I was looking at it. I looked up, that's called Shiva, I guess, is what I was thinking of, I think. But now I was thinking this time, it's kind of like a Shiva crossed with like a xenomorph from the Aliens movies. Although it was like a literal face hugger alien when it jumps on White's face there. Then that gets knocked aside too when they enter the eye. Oh, but also with the other gem/Connie gets a newly forged sword, which is cool. Bismuth gives it to her. And we get a little good Peridot stuff briefly. She says, I, Peridot, have returned, not as your servant, but as your savior. Which is a badass quote. If it was anyone other than Peridot, it's always comical, of course. And then, yeah, Peridot, Labus, and Bismuth don't actually make it inside the face to confront White. I don't believe they might actually pop in part 3 now that I think about it, but they didn't make it through in this part, what I'm calling part 2 here. Connie does come in toward the end, but so they confront White, and Steven says, "What have you done to them?" She says, "Shh." That's very creepy. She's shushing him through the possessed White and Blue. Then she kind of breaks down a little bit of what her kind of thoughts in general are about how people / gems are, and then specifically about her diamond sisters or whatever, which she even considers them all part of herself, I guess we see in a minute from this. But she says yellow is so strong but so weak when it comes to blue, like that's her weakness. Blue impurities soak up all the warmth in her spectrum and thinks she needs pink. That's her weakness, according to White. But White says she is every color of the light, and that pink is just a part of her she has to suppress. She doesn't need her. So, also in a minute, after that, she says she's cleansing the impurities, and that Pink's friends are he's bringing out the impurities in them. She says they're insecure. Amethyst, although not as much anymore. Dependent, Garnet, dependent, obviously Sapphire and Ruby are dependent on each other, it's true, but that's like any kind of marriage. I guess they are married now, or any kind of partnership, you're dependent on each other. Not a bad thing, necessarily. And then she says Pearl is obsessed, and I guess she has been obsessive before, especially with Pink and Rose. It's not the worst thing in the world ever. She's regarding that as all as impurities, though, and she thinks she needs to cleanse them, so this is getting very kind of,
I've removed their flaws. Now there is nothing to hinder my white light from sparkling through them.
They're clearly making somewhat allusions to, almost like ethnic cleansing or something, I suppose, especially since it's, white diamond. It's almost like a Nazi thing, borderline, but, and she's saying, though, Pink is enabling them, blah, blah, blah. She's implying that she herself, White, is perfect, which we clearly know is not the case.
No, they are me. You're wrong.
So, all this stuff, we see, they really do set up White to be quite a villain in this. So, it is, like I talked about a little bit in part 1, some of the stuff about how Steven changes their mind was a little too quick for me, maybe. I could see this getting drawn out even further for a lot more episodes with White being this ultimate villain or something. It's not the case, as we see by the end of the episode, but talk more about that next time. But this part ends then, of course, with White basically saying, you embedded yourself in that human child, you're still just Pink. He says, I'm not her, I'm just feeling her feelings. She's like, no, it's time to come out. Very sinisterly grabs his gem and then pulls it out. Commercial break / break until tomorrow, because the rest is part 3, which I'm going to get into tomorrow. But yeah, overall with this one, it was the shortest of these 3 parts. I've broken it up. Definitely some good stuff in this one, though. It's mainly White being villainous and doing her whole speechifying and all this stuff. Some creepiness for sure with how she's controlling everyone and turning all our crystal gem friends into parts of her, basically. Her whole philosophy like this. And then, of course, the action leading up to that and seeing the obsidian, which is definitely one of the coolest fusions we've seen, as it should be, since it's 4 main characters basically fused together. So yeah, and my whole theory of the symbolism between what each diamond represents as part of their ship. So anyway, thanks for checking this out. Again, do join me back tomorrow. Also, again, if you want to see the reaction altogether, even though it's harder to do that, you can still go back to my original live reaction video. And do join me back tomorrow for part 3 when I wrap things up. And until then, I'm out of here. Peace.